Have you ever wondered why some traditional practices have endured for thousands of years? Long before modern laboratories and clinical trials, our ancestors developed remarkable insights about health and longevity that were passed down through generations. What's fascinating is that modern science is now confirming what these ancient traditions have taught all along. In today's fast-paced world, we're constantly bombarded with new health trends and miracle solutions. Yet sometimes, the most effective approaches to vibrant aging have been hiding in plain sight, preserved in cultural wisdom that spans centuries. Some elders who follow these time-tested traditions enjoy extraordinary health well into their 90s and beyond. In this video, we're going to explore 5 ancient wisdom practices that modern scientific research has now validated as powerful tools for healthy aging. These aren't passing fads or unproven theories. They're approaches that have stood the dual test of time and rigorous scientific investigation. By the end of our discussion, you'll understand exactly how to incorporate these ancient yet scientifically proven practices into your modern life. More importantly, you'll learn why these approaches work at a biological level to support health as you age. Stay with me until the end because I'll share a surprising insight about how these 5 practices work synergistically to create benefits greater than the sum of their parts. Let's discover how ancient wisdom and modern science can come together to help you age with greater vitality and resilience. Practice 1. Intermittent fasting. The ancient art of timed eating. The first ancient wisdom practice now confirmed by science isn't about what you eat, but when you eat. Intermittent fasting, the practice of intentionally limiting your eating window, has deep roots in virtually every spiritual and cultural tradition around the world, from Buddhist monks to indigenous peoples to religious practices spanning continents. For thousands of years, regular periods of fasting were built into cultural and religious calendars. Ancient healers from Hippocrates to Paracelsus prescribed periodic fasting for health renewal. What these traditional practices intuited, modern science has now confirmed. Giving your digestive system regular breaks triggers profound healing mechanisms within your body. Consider 2 women, both 68 years old, Elaine and Barbara. Elaine has adopted a simple form of time-restricted eating, consuming all her meals within an 8-hour window and giving her body 16 hours without food each day. Barbara eats whenever she feels like it, often snacking late into the evening and starting breakfast shortly after waking. While they might consume similar foods, their different eating patterns create dramatically different biological effects. Research shows that Elaine's approach activates cellular cleaning processes called autophagy, where the body clears out damaged cellular components. It improves insulin sensitivity, reduces inflammation, and even appears to activate longevity pathways at the genetic level. Studies published in prestigious journals like Cell and the New England Journal of Medicine have found that intermittent fasting can improve metabolic health markers, support brain health and cognitive function, enhance cellular repair processes, reduce markers of systemic inflammation, potentially extend healthy lifespan. What makes this practice so powerful is its simplicity. You don't need special equipment, expensive supplements, or complicated regimens. Ancient traditions understood that simply creating rhythms of eating and non-eating was beneficial. Modern science has confirmed why. If you're interested in exploring this practice, start gently. Try finishing dinner earlier and extending your overnight fast to 12 hours. Then gradually work up to 14 or 16 hours if your health permits. Always consult with your healthcare provider, especially if you have existing medical conditions. This ancient practice of timed eating doesn't just make intuitive sense. It's now backed by some of the most exciting research in longevity science. Today, Practice 2. Movement as medicine. The traditional wisdom of daily motion. The second ancient wisdom practice validated by modern science focuses on how our ancestors viewed movement, not as optional exercise but as essential medicine. Traditional cultures worldwide integrated consistent, gentle movement throughout daily life, rather than segmenting it into intense workout sessions. From Tai Chi practitioners in Chinese parks to Mediterranean communities with their daily walking, traditions to indigenous peoples who maintained movement practices well into advanced age. These cultures understood something profound about human physiology that modern science has only recently quantified. Daily, varied movement is essential, medicine for the aging body. Consider two men in their mid-70s, Richard and Harold. Richard follows the modern exercise approach. He visits the gym twice weekly for a structured 45-minute workout, then spends the rest of his time mostly seated. Harold never formally exercises, but walks to local shops daily, tends a small garden, stretches each morning, and stands frequently while reading or talking on the phone. Recent research suggests that Harold's approach, consistent with ancient wisdom traditions, provides greater longevity benefits. Studies published in journals like The Lancet show that regular light movement distributed throughout the day has more powerful effects on metabolic health, inflammation levels, and even brain function than occasional intense exercise sessions, interrupted by extended periods of sitting. Traditional movement wisdom emphasized consistency over intensity, multiple movement types rather than repetitive motions, integration with daily activities rather than segregation, natural movement patterns instead of isolated muscle exercises, communal practices that combined social connection with physical activity. Modern research confirms these approaches activate unique metabolic pathways that support healthy aging. For instance, regular brief walking after meals improves glucose metabolism by up to 22% compared to a single longer walk. Even micro-movements like brief standing breaks reduce inflammatory markers associated with accelerated aging. If you've ever found yourself struggling with modern exercise recommendations, take heart in this ancient wisdom. Focus on building more natural movement throughout your day. Take short walks after meals. Stand up while on the phone. Stretch whenever you think of it. Tend plants, or practice gentle movements like Tai Chi that cultures have preserved for centuries. This traditional approach to movement isn't just easier to maintain. Science now confirms it may be more effective for supporting longevity than the compartmentalized exercise model many of us have adopted. Practice 3. The healing power of cold exposure. The third ancient wisdom practice, now validated by cutting-edge science, involves something many modern people actively avoid: deliberate exposure to cold temperatures. From Russian winter swimming traditions to Japanese misogi cold water practices, to Nordic cultures with their sauna to snow routines, intentional cold exposure features prominently in longevity traditions worldwide. These ancestral practices weren't random tests of endurance. Traditional wisdom recognized that controlled stress from cold exposure triggered healing responses throughout the body. Modern science now calls this beneficial stress hormesis, the biological principle that small, manageable stressors strengthen living systems. Meet Margaret and Helen, both active women in their early 70s. Margaret follows her Finnish ancestors' tradition of ending her showers with 30 seconds of cold water, and occasionally swims in cool, natural waters. Helen always keeps her environment comfortable, avoids temperature variations, and takes only warm showers. Recent research published in journals like Cell Metabolism and Nature suggests that Margaret's approach activates remarkable adaptive pathways in the body. Brief cold exposure has been shown to increase mitochondrial efficiency and production, improving cellular energy, activate brown fat, a metabolically beneficial tissue that declines with age-release norepinephrine, supporting brain health and mood regulation, reduce inflammation markers associated with chronic disease, strengthen immune response and resilience. What traditional cultures intuitively recognized through observation and practice, science now confirms through metabolic studies and molecular analysis. The controlled stress of cold exposure literally changes how our cells function, activating ancient survival pathways that protect against age-related decline. The good news is that you don't need polar plunges or extreme measures to benefit. Simple practices like ending your shower with 15-30 seconds of cold water, briefly stepping outside without a jacket in cool weather, or washing your face with cool water can trigger these beneficial responses. As always, introduce any cold exposure gradually and consult healthcare providers if you have cardiovascular concerns. But don't dismiss this ancient wisdom as mere superstition. The science supporting cold exposure for health aging is increasingly compelling. Practice 4. Bitter foods and plants. Traditional tonics for modern health. The fourth ancient wisdom practice validated by modern research concerns something many contemporary diets completely lack: bitter-tasting foods and plant compounds. Traditional healing systems from Chinese medicine to Ayurveda to Native American herbalism all emphasize the importance of bitter flavors for maintaining health, particularly as people aged. Our ancestors across continents incorporated bitter greens, roots, herbs, and tonics into their daily routines. Modern palates have largely abandoned these flavors in favor of sweet, salty, and fatty options. But science now confirms our traditional food wisdom was remarkably sophisticated in understanding how bitter compounds support our biology. Consider Julia and Teresa, both vibrant women in their late 60s. Julia regularly incorporates bitter greens like dandelion and arugula in her salads, enjoys dark chocolate, sips occasional bitter herbal teas, and seasons foods with bitter herbs like rosemary and oregano. Teresa avoids anything bitter, preferring milder, sweeter options that dominate modern processed foods. Recent research in phytochemistry and nutritional science reveals that Julia's traditional approach provides remarkable benefits. Bitter compounds stimulate digestive enzyme production and bile flow, improving nutrient absorption, activate detoxification pathways that clear cellular waste and environmental toxins, contain polyphenols that support mitochondrial health and cellular energy, often have anti-inflammatory properties that counter age-related inflammation, support healthy gut microbiome diversity, increasingly linked to longevity. What traditional healers called bitter tonics for vitality, modern science now identifies as molecular compounds like flavonoids, alkaloids, and terpenoids with specific biological actions. These compounds often activate health-promoting genetic pathways while supporting metabolic balance. Incorporating this ancestral wisdom doesn't require dramatic changes. Simple additions like adding arugula, endive, or radicchio to salads, enjoying small amounts of 70% plus, dark chocolate cooking with bitter herbs like rosemary, thyme, and oregano, occasionally sipping traditional bitter teas like dandelion root, including small amounts of fermented bitter foods. These additions can reconnect you with the traditional flavor wisdom that modern food processing has largely eliminated. Your taste buds might initially resist, but many people find they develop an appreciation for these complex flavors that our ancestors valued so highly for their health-promoting properties. Practice 5. The sacred pause. Mindfulness. Before modern stress. The fifth ancient wisdom practice confirmed by science addresses something our ancestors understood intuitively, but modern life increasingly lacks: the necessity of regular mental stillness. From Zen meditation traditions to Native American contemplative practices to ancient Greek philosophical schools, cultures worldwide developed techniques for quieting the mind and being fully present. These weren't merely spiritual exercises, but practical tools for maintaining mental clarity and emotional balance throughout the aging process. Modern neuroscience now validates what these traditions discovered through observation and practice. Regular mindfulness dramatically alters brain structure and function in ways that promote healthy aging. Meet David and Robert, both successful professionals now in their early 70s. David has maintained a daily practice of sitting quietly for 15 minutes each morning, observing his breath and thoughts without attachment. A simple mindfulness practice his grandmother taught him decades ago. Robert fills every moment with activity, information, and stimulation, rarely experiencing moments of mental quietude. Research published in journals like Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews has found that David's traditional approach creates measurable changes in the brain, including increased gray matter in regions controlling attention and emotional regulation, reduced activation in the default mode network, associated with harmful rumination, enhanced connectivity between brain regions that decline in typical aging, lower cortisol production and improved stress recovery, better preserved cognitive function and processing speed. Modern society's constant stimulation, from digital devices to packed schedules, runs contrary to this ancient wisdom. Yet the science is clear. Our ancestors were correct that regular mental stillness is essential for brain health as we age. The practice doesn't require special training or religious affiliation. Simple approaches like taking 3 conscious breaths before meals, a practice found in many traditions, spending 5 minutes watching a sunrise or sunset without distraction, walking in nature while fully observing your surroundings, sitting quietly for a few minutes before starting your day, practicing gratitude reflection before sleep, a component of many traditional practices. These small pauses, consistent with wisdom traditions worldwide, activate neurological pathways that support cognitive resilience and emotional regulation throughout the aging process. Conclusion: the wisdom of integration. Now that you understand these 5 ancient practices that modern science has validated: intermittent fasting, distributed natural movement, cold exposure, bitter plant compounds, and mindful pauses, let's talk about what makes them truly powerful. Their integration into a holistic approach to aging well. Our ancestors didn't practice these elements in isolation. Traditional wisdom understood that these practices worked synergistically, creating benefits greater than the sum of their parts. Modern research confirms this integrated approach activates multiple complementary pathways that support healthy longevity. When intermittent fasting is paired with movement throughout the day, metabolic flexibility improves more dramatically than either practice alone. When cold exposure is followed by mindful breathing, stress resilience increases substantially. When bitter foods are consumed within a limited eating window, their detoxification benefits are amplified. The most remarkable aspect of these traditional practices is their accessibility. Unlike many modern interventions that require expensive equipment, supplements, or medical supervision, these ancient wisdom approaches are available to almost everyone. They don't require special facilities, significant financial resources, or complex training. As we've explored these scientifically validated traditional practices, I hope you've recognized that vibrant aging isn't about adding artificial interventions. It's about reconnecting with natural patterns that human bodies evolved to thrive with over thousands of years. I encourage you to consider which of these practices might enhance your own aging journey. Perhaps begin with just one element that resonates with you, gradually incorporating it into your routine. Traditional wisdom never advocated for radical overnight changes, but rather for sustainable shifts that become lifelong practices. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of ancient wisdom, now validated by modern science. I'd love to hear which of these practices you're already following or planning to explore. Leave a comment below, sharing your experiences or questions about these time-tested approaches to vibrant aging. If you found value in these insights, please consider subscribing and sharing this video with someone who might benefit. Your support helps us continue creating content that bridges traditional wisdom with contemporary research. Until next time, remember that some of the most powerful tools for healthy aging aren't new innovations. They're ancient practices waiting to be rediscovered.